Hello, everyone. My name is Allan Dick, and on behalf of my fellow CommerceNext co-founders, Scott Silverman and Veronica Sonsev, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today is Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021, and our topic this week is Winning the Inbox, Reviving Open Rates in a Crowded Email World. Before we go any further, I want to welcome our extensive panel this week. Anurag Kadyan, he's a VP Direct-to-Consumer and E-commerce at Swell. Shawna Hausman, Chief Marketing Officer at Health E-commerce. Houman Akhavan, the Chief Marketing Officer at carparkscom. And Engin Yilmaz, the Director of Product Management at Sift. Finally, Iain Hunneybell, the Global Head of Information Security at uxnet Porter Group. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. It's great having you here. And let us move right along. Additional thanks. I want to thank our sponsor today, Sift. Thank you guys for doing this. Appreciate it. As always, we always want to thank our gifting sponsor, Gift Now. 5 lucky live attendees, replay listeners, will receive a gift of their choice. We'll draw those names just after the webinar ends today, and the winners will be notified by email. I want to thank our audience for joining us today. We always appreciate you take some time out of your week to be with us. Today's agenda, got a sneak peek for next week's webinar. Next after that, we're going to find where you can get some more CN content. We got your back there. Housekeeping notes to make certain that you get the most out of this, show you how to use the functionality of the webinar program. Engin's going to briefly discuss how deliverability issues can be harming your email campaigns and teach you about a new product called BIMI, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to have an extensive panel discussion and audience Q&A. Next week, personalized engagement, how to stop frustrating your customers. Always a good idea not to frustrate them. Scott Silverman, man, myth, legend, one of my co-founders. I'm sorry, I can just see him in the background. He's going to be leading that webinar with folks from Camping World, Mo, Engage, and Walgreens. That's going to be a great discussion. Make certain you sign up for that. If you missed any of our past events, no worries. We have over 100 different videos up on our YouTube channel. You can find them there at youtube.com, CommerceNext. Podcast time. We have our second podcast that drops, I think, tomorrow. That is with special guest Alex Waldman. She's the co-founder and creative director of Universal Standard, and she's going to be talking about joy as a career strategy. So make certain you get a listen in on that. Can't get enough of Alex? Who could? Well, you can always see her in person. Where? No, IRL, of course. We're back live in person on September 28th and 29th at the New York Hilton Midtown. You can register for that as well. We are going to have 2 days of content, over 80 speakers. It's going to be a monster, and it's going to be awesome seeing everyone back together again. So make certain you sign up for that. Housekeeping. As always, don't worry about missing anything. All right, we're recording this webinar. We're going to make it available by tomorrow afternoon. It'll actually be probably done tonight. I'm going to walk around here and show you where you can find things on your screen. Take a look at the upper right-hand corner. You're going to see 4 controls. You're going to see chat, Q&A, polls, and handouts. Chat, that's where we can chat with people. You want to say hi to somebody on the call, you want to make a general comment, hey, love to do it there. Got a question for us? And we strongly encourage audience questions. That's why we're here. We have a whole bunch of questions ready to go here, but we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. If you missed something, you want to explain something more, you have a question, please ask it in the Q&A. The reason we have you do it there as opposed to chat, because you can upvote it. And that signals to us what are the key questions you guys want us to cover. What are the key topics? So put your questions in there. If you see one in there you like, hit the upvote button. That tells us what's going on. And you can do that by using the chat or the text field at the bottom right of your screen. All right, we're going to change things up a little bit today. That's right. Veteran CommerceNext webinar viewers always expect us to go to the presentation, but nay, not today. We're going to do one poll question, and we're going to do it at the beginning. So here we go. Question for today. What percentage of the marketing emails you send get to the inbox of the intended recipient? Is it A, 90 to 100, B, 80 to 89, C, 70 to 79, D, 60 to 69, E, less than 59%, and I really don't know why I'm employed, and F, I don't know. So those are your options. Give you guys a couple of seconds to look through those. I'm going to head over to the results here. Interesting. Whoa. So I was kind of joking about less than 59%. but that is where it's coming in. So here's what I'm seeing so far. Looks like 30-ish% are in the 90 to 100, 20-ish% 80 to 89, 9% are 70 to 79, 9% 60 to 69, 22% less than 59. It's like this inverted curve. There's like, we're either delivering a lot or we have no idea. So that's a really interesting curve. All right, looks like it's stabilized. It looks like half of you are showing over 80%, and roughly 40% are less than 60. Only 9% of you are saying it's between 70 and 79%. Most interesting. All righty. We'll close that poll. Engin, let's bring Engin Yilmaz, the Director of Product Management from Sift. How are you, sir? You are on mute. Unmute yourself, sir.
What a fantastic! I was so enthralled by you and your presence that I couldn't get off mute fast enough.
You know what? That's a common problem.
Must happen a lot.
Yeah. So you're calling in from the UK. You are up late this evening.
I wouldn't go late. I mean, it's only 7 o'clock. It's relatively.
I mean, it's an early day for you.
It's still light. Yep. From the UK.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to let you use the results of that poll to kind of inform some of your commentary to your presentation. And when you're done, we've got a little something else to chat about before we bring the panel up. So, Engin, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's share your screen.
Okay, well, in that case, then I'll jump straight into it. So, as this sort of webinar is entitled, "Winning in the Inbox," but the thing is, I'm not really going to dwell too much on subject lines, personalization, trigger words, content offers, and all those kind of things, because for you guys in this kind of audience, that's a lot like talking about snow to Eskimos, and that's not going to go very far. But what I'm going to talk about is the emerging standard that Allan mentioned, BIMI, its components, how it impacts deliverability, and how potentially you can go about benefiting from it within the inboxes of your customers. So thinking about that, what does success look like? Or more accurately, what are the key moments in time and the inflection points on that journey to success? So I think about that, the first thing that comes to mind is deliverability. That kind of talks to that poll question. And of course, list quality and hygiene is important, but so is that question of, did it get there? And not just did it get there, but which inbox did it actually end up going into? But we can come back onto that a bit later on. Then in the next part of that journey and those inflection points opened, how great was the timing? How well received was the art that you guys do, whether it comes to the trigger words, the subject lines, whatever it happens to be, but crucially being able to catch the recipient in their moments of need. And then lastly, the clicks. Was that content engaging, or was it reflective of that moment of need? Now, assuming that those planets align, marketing attributed engagement, retention, acquisition are, in theory, not that far away. And then when you think about that, you've invested the time in data quality, and your list is clean, it's segmented, you've gone big on automation, and you've got a great indication of when your audience might engage, and your timing for delivering the emails is pretty much spot on. You've agonized over every aspect of that email. When someone opens that email, the first line, the whole content of it is so good that, Charles Dickens would probably weep if he ever received one of your emails, which of course he can't. So there's literally no earthly reason why everyone in this group on the screen shouldn't be engaging and acting with your calls to action immediately. Your metrics should all be achieved, and, you're well on your way to timing the sum with your bonus. But, as you might guess, this is kind of a bit of a how it started and how it's going kind of story. So then this happens. Okay, so these guys, well, they never got it. 21% according to Return Path. Never knew, never heard of it, didn't happen. But the reality is it has kind of less to do with the quality of your list and the actual delivery, and more to do with that sort of slight nuance on deliverability. But again, more of that later on. The next problem occurs is really that, according to Campaign Monitor, 70-ish% were pretty much blind to it. Most likely, it might have landed in the last known resting place for beautifully crafted email, the dreaded promotions tab. But most likely, They could have been one of that 71% who scanned the list view of emails on their phone, and nothing really resonated at that exact moment in time, or it could have been shoved down beneath the scroll. But for those on that journey, what are they looking for? Well, if the email's transactional, there's a pretty good chance they might look at it. You're just knocking around about 47%. But they're also looking for who sent it, about 46%, and what did the subject have to say for itself? That's about 34%. Now, of the things that you can influence in your day-to-day, all said and done, that puts a lot of pressure on the art that you create, from the timing and the being able to actually physically send that email and actually put that into someone's view with whatever the subject line, whatever the offer happens to be. But things are looking up. These guys, all 3% of them, cared enough and opened it up. Which is, a great start, which then just leaves this guy. Bingo, the planets have aligned, we've got a winner. But though, we'd probably need twice as many people icons on this screen to kind of get to a whole person. Now, outside of this kind of group and audience, the uninitiated and the unknowing might think, well, that doesn't feel like a great return if for every 100 people, nearly one of them actually clicks something. But the reality is, for the knowing and the initiated, is that for every dollar that gets spent, depending on which industry you happen to be in, there's a return of $40 to $45. So that's kind of why it happens. That's why it gets done. So returning to this, and assuming that you've kind of optimized all those other pieces in terms of hygiene, timing, subject lines, and content, are there other ways that you can impact these points on the journey to success and maximize that throughput at the top of the funnel, and influence the customer's decisions downstream to enhance the KPI value? Now, at the start of this, I said I was going to talk about winning in the inbox without touching any of those things. And so, sort of time to sort of turn that slightly and look at and focus on BIMI. What does that mean? How can you benefit from it? What do you actually need to actually to get there? And how, of course, it can impact these three elements: deliverability, opens, and clicks. So, what is BIMI and what are its touch points? Well, BIMI stands for Brand Indicators Messaging Identification. Now, it's an emerging standard for inserting your registered trademark inside the email client, as you can see here. Now, by doing that, it makes it simple for your organization to display its brand in the email. And from a user point of view, it means that when a user sees it and opens it up, opens that email up on the email client that does support it, organizations who've adopted the standard are able to present their registered logos in a secure, interoperable way. Okay, so sounds kind of interesting. Better to have the logo than not the logo. And, we can sort of get into only very slightly on the exact benefits of that in a second. So probably raises some other questions. When is it going to happen? Where is it going to happen? How might I go about it? Well, the where, I'd be happy to know, is in Gmail. Gmail is currently in the pilot phase of this, and that's the one that folks are most interested in. There are other players like Comcast, Fastmail, Yahoo. They've expressed an interest in joining the program, but they've not exactly said when they're going to begin just yet. The when of it, that can't be quite confirmed because I no longer work at Google, so I can't talk on their behalf anymore, but potentially it's in the quite near future. The last question is, how do you go about getting BIMI? Now, for that brand's logo to be displayed, there are a couple of things that need to happen. After all, this is an email that supposedly you have sent that's carrying your logo. So someone somewhere better be very, very sure that it really is you and that really is your logo. Otherwise, you've probably got more problems than you'd care to mention. But for it to be displayed, there's one part. Is that logo really yours? What you need is a verified mark certificate. That's the VMC. It's a digital certificate, and it says that in this example here, that YOOX logo is a registered trademark of YOOX, and they are absolutely authorized to use that. The second part of that, looking at the screen, did this email really come from YOOX? And so that's the second part of it. That means that the domain that sent that, whether it's the top level or the sending domain, both have something called DMARC enforcement. I'm going to get into that in a bit, but DMARC, essentially, it's the clear and reliable signal to those that process your email, so the ISPs, and receive your email, that it really has been sent by you, and lets the receiver of that email know how to treat it when it fails. So that's potentially one of the answers as to where some of your email has gone, but primarily people generally use it to stop brand impersonation and people from spoofing your email. So if in that kind of DMARC piece provides that clear signal to the world, the ISPs and the receivers of it, that your email is legitimate, what else is it doing under the hood? And what does it mean into those 3 points of deliverability, opens and clicks? So the main beneficiary of that really is deliverability. Now, looking at DMARC a little bit more, Alan's given me I can go into 4 acronyms. I think I've used 1 so far, so I'm only going to use two more of them. So if DMARC manages the security and deliverability posture of the email that you send, that in turn relies on 2 other pieces. One is SPF and the other one is DKIM. Now, SPF is a sender policy framework. It tells the world that it's been sent by an authorized source, i.e. an IP address, but essentially it's letting people know that you sent it, or it's being sent by me on behalf of a particular domain. Maybe you've got a third party who handles some of your email. DKIM, domain key identified email, that basically uses a digital signature that says, yes, this was sent or authorized to be sent by the owner of the domain. DMARC, as I've already said, kind of puts that all together and makes sure that those 2 pieces align and lets people know what to do if either of those things fail. Now, how big a deal is DMARC? Well, the answer is it's quite a big deal. Google has written a paper proposing, essentially, no authorization, no play. So no authorization, no delivery. So in that version of the world, if you're not in DMARC compliance, there is a very real risk of your deliverability going through the floor. Now, thinking in terms of some of those pieces, particularly if you're using third-party sending services, then you might want to have a little think a bit more about that sender policy framework. Now, that's the part of DMARC that keeps track of all those authorized sources that can send in your domain's name. Now, as part of that authentication process, it's going to have to translate those domain names to IP addresses by making some DNS lookups. Now, if those lookups are unlimited, that mail server wouldn't be able to protect itself by getting flooded from denial of service attacks. Now, that limit is 10. Sounds like a lot, but it isn't really. So if your organization uses Google, then that's 4 lookups gone. If you're using a third-party sender for marketing, then that's another 3 or 4 each. And once you've gone past 10, there's no 2 ways about it. You will absolutely have email deliverability problems. Now, 10 isn't really a lot. So just for what it's worth, and by way of an example, we actually have we've got customers who have got over 200 lookups going on. So unless you're firmly on top of that, or use something like dynamic SPF, which removes that glass ceiling, you may have that problem right there, and that kind of talks back to some of those poll results. So it's pretty critical, especially if you're using third parties. The other 2 parts of that puzzle, open and clicks. Now, in the webinar invitation, if you cast your minds back, it mentioned that some of the benefits of having BIMI, having that verified mark, yes, it's yours, being in DMARC compliance, yes, it is your email, and then achieving that logo would have benefits in the range of about 10%. Now, that's a headline that's been in the public domain for quite a few years now, when the idea of BIMI was in its infancy. Now, at around GA time, you should expect to see new research coming out in the various sort of usual channels, and of course, CommerceNext. But given that the world has kind of moved on a bit, whether it's usage screens, the demographics using those screens, the competition for eyeballs has moved on a hell of a long way, it'll be easier to imagine that 10% benefit number has also moved on, particularly when it comes to how that logo impacts the journey, the opens and the clicks, and also what levels of brand recall they have. I would love to share more of those details with you, but right now it's strictly under lock and key until GA time. But what I can say is from a couple of brands that are both clear leaders in their fields, and both of whom are in DMARC compliance and have already applied for and received their accreditations for BIMI. For one of them, It's a large European organization. It's represented in every European market. They hold domains in the high five figures, both defensively and actively. And they've stated being able to apply BIMI across their brands is their #1 priority. For another one, also a leader in its field, for every 1% opens they gain or lose, it equates to $1.4 million in revenue. And from their own research, they both see the benefit of BIMI and also the negative consequence if competitors have it and they don't. So thinking about, can I have it? Who's got it? Well, this is something I picked up from something called BIMIradar.com, and it tracks who is in the right place to be able to show their logo in Gmail when GA eventually comes, not so far away. And so right now it's relatively few, but it's open to those who are able to move first and move fast. Thinking in terms of, also what next? Can you apply for BIMI? What does that look like? So we did some analysis on Monday. So we haven't captured all of the people on this call, but what we found was fairly startling. Right now, as it stands, the good news is that 19% of the companies participating in this webinar, they've got a pretty good email and security deliverability posture. And they could apply for BIMI or pre-apply for BIMI tomorrow. We can talk about that in a separate piece. But it does also mean that 81% of people are not the right level of DMARC to be able to actually go and make that application for BIMI. Now, not only does that mean that 81% couldn't apply for BIMI, it also means that same 81% are open to spoofing and impersonation. And that's brand equity, and that's trust in your brand pretty much right there if there is that risk that your brand could be spoofed. Going a bit further, we went and looked at the SPF lookups of each of you guys. And by the way, this isn't some dark art proprietary information. This is publicly available and as part of the records that drive your email. But be that as it may, around about 11% are at a level of lookups will have issues that will cause them some sending issues. There are also, unfortunately, 6% in here who 100% do have sending issues. Now, we can redo this analysis again, so we've captured the whole piece of it. I mean, as Allan says, we will most certainly make this available individually, obviously not to everyone. So it's going to be just your particular posture available to you. What next? Well, if you kind of are interested and you want to kind of find out more about getting the brand in the email and getting there before others do, getting it in Gmail, then this would be the link that I would suggest that you would follow. GoRichSift.com, BIMI for marketers. So I think that was my 10 minutes, give or take, Allan. Sorry if I've gone over, but I'll hand it back to you.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that, here at CommerceNext, we want to make certain that everyone's getting the most out of these webinars as possible. So we definitely encourage you to ask questions, but we also I wanted to reiterate the offer that Engin proposed there at the end. We did look at all of the DMARC and SPF results from a search on your domains, and there was quite a bit there that's quite interesting. So I've asked them to make it available to anyone on this call. It's going to be private and it's no obligation. All you have to do is contact Redsift. You can contact me. I'm more than happy to put you in touch, but there's a lot to be seen there, and there was a lot that needed that should be up for conversation with your IT department. Let's put it that way. All right, so let's move right along. We are at about 25 after the hour. I want to get to our panel. So just a quick reminder, Q&A, we're seeing them come through. We definitely appreciate that. Keep those questions coming in. We have handouts. Make sure you download those. A lot of good, useful information there. And finally, if you're watching this on the replay, those handouts are available by clicking on the document icon. And with that, I want to remind you that Scott's going to be here next week doing personalized engagement, how to stop frustrating your customers. That's Wednesday, June 30th. Now, let us bring on our panel. All right. Looks like we have everyone here. Perfect. All right. Everyone's audio is working. It's 26 after the hour. We have time to chat. This is going to be good. All right. So let's start with introductions. Shall we start with Shawna?
Sure. Hi, guys. I'm Shawna Hausman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Health E-commerce, which is the parent company to FSA Store and HSAstore.com, where we sell exclusively FSA and HSA eligible health and wellness products.
Outstanding. Before we bring on Anurag, I'm just going to take a sip out of my ridiculously large Swell Bottle.
Well, product placement.
That's an icy cold beverage. Anurag?
That was very swell, Allan.
It was swell of you to join us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi, everybody. I'm Anurag Kadyan. I'm the VP of Direct-to-Consumer and E-commerce for Swell. You probably all know us for our bottles, but we are now a certified B Corp. There's a lot that goes into it. Last year, the team at Swell spent countless number of hours of organizational time to get this certification. We are proud to have it. That tells our customers that our North Star is sustainability. So we have moved beyond just bottles. What we are doing is we are known for bottles, but we are moving into all product categories where our mantra is, how do we help our customers do more with less, in parentheses, small font plastic.
Perfect. Houman, you're a veteran webinar participant. Always great to see you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Houman Akhavan, Chief Marketing Officer at carparkscom. We're a direct-to-consumer retailer of aftermarket auto parts, and our mission is to get drivers back on the road by making it easy and convenient to shop for auto parts online. Thank you.
All right, and Iain.
Hi, I'm Iain Hunneybell. I'm the Global Head of Information Security for uxnet, which is a global online high fashion retailer selling all kinds of things which I probably would never buy for myself, but there you go.
All right. Hey, quick question here. Engin, what email address should the audience use to reach out for the analysis?
That's a good question. You can direct it to myself, and I will farm it to the right person. But I'll fetch it out, and we can get the right call going. So you can send it to me. You have my email address, or do you want me to just put it in the chat? Or
just put it in the chat, and then Veronica can then post it on the big marker for everyone to take a look at. Cool.
Okay, I'll put the right email address in there.
Thank you, sir. All right, so let's start off with Sean. I want to ask you, and then we'll bring it up to the rest of the panel. How do you define a successful email program? Let's set the foundation here before we start digging deeper. Ooh, you're on mute. Oh, you're on dreaded mute.
Mute. Oh no, I got too nervous. I got too paranoid. For us, we think of a successful email program as one that really reflects the current health needs and health concerns of our customers. Being a company that really specializes in health and wellness products, we do spend a lot of time thinking about this, and we know that our program really succeeds when we nail that perfect balance of education and timely content, especially this past year that's been very, very relevant. So educational and timely content that really perfectly supports the product story we're telling at that moment.
All right. Anurag, what are your thoughts there?
I think just to add on, Sean, is the way we look at it is kind of two balancing metrics. I call it balancing. One is, of course, what is the email program returning to the business as a channel? What is the revenue in this time period, right? We all look for goals, and we all have plans that we have to meet, and what is that channel supporting from a revenue perspective? And the second one kind of aligns with where Shawna was leading into, which is engagement of the consumer. So when we drive our digital marketing programs across all of the different channels, all of those leads come into the funnel, whether it's a prospect or a repeat purchaser. This particular channel is so key in engaging those consumers with what our brands have to offer, and then eventually convert, whether that conversion is first conversion of getting a prospect to a first-time buyer or repeat purchase. So those are the two ways we look at it. And the second aspect of that is the technical, which I think Engin went quite deep into, is legal issues, CAN-SPAM laws, GDPR, and how are we in compliance with all of those legal brand standing issues and technical issues. I think those are the two different ways to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Juan, you had a thought on that. You think it should be the most profitable channel, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very similar to Anurag and Shawna's points. Like for us, we make the customer central to everything that we're doing. And the email channel, it's a channel where you have this intimate conversation. You're really entering the inbox of your consumers, right? So I think you have to take that with a lot of additional, insights to really drive the channel. So understanding the customer, personalization, understanding what matters to the customer. So you're delivering the right message at the right time to really drive that business action that you're looking for. But yeah, absolutely. I think email, if you look at your entire marketing stack and the channels that you engage with customers, it should absolutely be one of your most profitable channels because your investment is really in the technology and the experience. It's less about, customer acquisition and spending to acquire customers. It's more about, delivering the right message to drive the engagement for that user.
Yep, and Iain, let me bring you in. I'm certain you're probably going to agree with everyone else in the panel, but you kind of bring a technology perspective to this conversation. I want to exploit that a little bit. You're probably thinking more along the privacy, deliverability, security portion of this.
Well, yes, I was going to say it's not quite my bailiwick, being that I've turned to the dark side and in security. But in fact, many years ago, I did actually run some marketing functions, so I have some experience. I mean, for me, actually, and in fact, the work we have done in DMARC and BIMI, a lot of that has been done with our digital marketing people. And so I still have, despite the security banner, and I know I'm supposed to suck my teeth and like to say no. Actually, we are trying to run a business, so actually, I have quite a big interest in it. So for me, I guess the ultimate measure is the revenue it brings in, because ultimately that's why we do it. But obviously, there's the hard metric of the success of a particular campaign, and then there's the softer, harder to measure metric about the brand awareness and therefore the propensity of a customer to purchase in the future, which is a much harder thing to measure. But I mean, that's, to me, actually is the ultimate measure of a mail program. I have lots of other thoughts about mail, which do get into technical security and which actually have huge implication on the success of your mail programs. But maybe I'm straying off, or that might be.
We'll be talking about that. I mean, I think we would all agree that
there's until then.
Yeah, I think we would all agree that there's both an art and a science to running an email program. And we've talked about the science quite a bit. Engin, you covered that, and we're going to come back to it. But I really kind of want to hit the art portion of this. So let's talk about the creative. What are you seeing that's working? What isn't working? Shawna, again, I think I'll start with you on this. You had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a real shift recently, and right now, what seems to be really working, I think, reflects the general attitude in this country. It's people are feeling much more positive, and I think that what we're seeing work are emails with a creative that has a real high excitement score. So things that are colorful, that are very positive. And overall, I think that at the end of the day, it's make it quick, short, and snappy. I think that's what that's what they're looking for right now in terms of what they're engaging with right in email. It's what we're seeing.
Yeah, we're seeing questions come in on that. Anthony was asking what content type is best for email engagement, video, image, etc., and should emails be condensed as much as possible to keep viewers engaged? That's the position you're taking. You in our prep call, I think you were saying something to the effect of that, during COVID, everyone has all the time in the world to sit there in front of a computer screen. Now,
that's right. We being in the health industry, we had a lot of people's attention last year, for not the best of reasons, obviously, but people wanted as much information as we could give. The more we could tell about products like digital thermometers and pulse oximeters and over-the-counter meds and all these things that people were very interested in. So we were doing a lot of very long form emails, and people were reading all of it. They were reading every bit, and they were engaging all along the way, high click-through rates, et cetera. But I think, as you guys all probably are experiencing yourselves. I mean, people are not sitting in front of their computer reading email all day anymore. You know, they're going to open it, they're looking, they're quick in and out. And they want to be thinking about travel. They want to go to the park. They want to go on a picnic. They want to go to dinner with friends. They're doing a lot of other things that are competing for their time that they're spending. You know, there's just a lot going on. And I think people want that positive energy. They want to get out in the world again. So, you know, we've been really trying to tap into that positivity and into that kind of opening up nature and really talk about travel, talk about sunscreen for going to the beach, talk about venture medical kits for when you're going out on an outward bound adventure, you know, things like that. These things are working for us. It's not just about, you know, digital thermometers. If people never saw another digital thermometer in their life, you know, it would be too soon, you know? So you got to really be tuned in.
Yeah, you got to be dialed in right now. I mean, car prices are at, you know, highs, but, you know, certainly used car prices are there. People have got to be holding on to vehicles longer. They got to be doing more with their parts. What are you seeing from your end? What kind of creative are you using and how are you reacting to it?
Yes. So one-to-one personalization, I can't stress enough how big of a driver that could be to your email program. If you really take a step back and you think about the email as a channel 5, 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of batch and blast, you know, types of campaigns out there, and it was one message for your entire audience. And it's really been an arms race from a technology perspective. The technology is really caught up in terms of what you're really able to do to kind of, you know, target an individual and craft the message, but to do it in real time and understand all the signals that are available to you, right? With everything that was driven by the pandemic and new customers coming online for the first time, we've really been able to kind of capture more insights and information about our customers and then have that really drive the email program. I think there was a question by Cheryl in terms of how much personalization has been a focus for the program. It's been a cornerstone really for the program. And it's, you know, again, email inboxes are flooded. People don't want to have a generic message, right? They want to have a message that really talks to them and their motivations. So personalization is really another, you know, method to really talk about it to that individual. And it also ties into deliverability, right? If you think about, you know, ISPs and what they're looking for in terms of what emails they want to let through, they also care about relevancy as well too, right? They don't want a generic message in the inbox. So they have algorithms can really pick up for that. So we've also seen personalization drive better, you know, open rates and deliverability rates as well too.
Mm-hmm. Anurag?
Yeah, so it's
from the water perspective.
Yeah, not just water. I think my previous life was a multi-brand retailer, and now I'm a singular brand retailer. Oh, yeah. So I think there are two perspectives here. I do agree with both Shawna and Houman. Technology is a key part of it. I put it in the science bucket in some sense, but personalization, engaging content that matters to the customer, it's all relevant, right? The way I think about it is there are a couple of different questions here from audience around what type of content should we use? There's no single silver bullet. Think about the batch and blast days. You were planning calendars, you were planning content. What was the key? The key in that art was that there has to be variety for the consumer. In your list, everybody is not the same. Some percent will respond. So let's say if we are all lucky to have 20% open rates in batch and blast, take your list, 20% will respond to message A, the other 20 to B, other 20 to C. Now you have to figure out a way, how do you create that variety for the consumers so that all of your audiences get some message every time, right? There's the piece of trigger/automated campaigns, which is where Houman is going, right? But when I look at ourselves as a brand, when we are launching a new product, that's not personalized. That's a new product launch messaging that we want to send to the consumers. So whether it is subject lines, segmentation, and the content and the type of content, you have to cover the spectrum because there's no one single thing that'll win out in every scenario.
I agree. So let's talk about subject lines for a second. And Iain, I will definitely bring you back in when we get back to technical, which we guaranteed we'll do. But James Taylor Williams has 7 upvotes on his question, so I'm definitely going to get to it. He was saying, what is a good way to test subject lines? How can I categorize certain types of subject lines? Anurag, you were just talking about that, but but lay it upon us.
Yeah, great question. I think I'm going to start with there are n number of ways, right? you can think about campaign types. It's a promo message. Is it a new arrival message? Is it a engagement message? You can talk about your segments. You can talk about the action keywords that you're using in your subject lines. You can talk about the urgency keywords that you're using in your subject lines, right? Are you using emojis? Are you using personalization? I just gave you 10 different types of categorization, and it can get complex very fast. I like the rule, right? Keep it simple, stupid. That's the KISS rule. And I think the point is you have to start with your hypothesis as why are you testing the subject line and what is the goal you're trying to achieve? And based on that, you define your categorization rules. Because if you try to categorize 10 different ways and take a look, it'll take you 3 months to get to a logical result. But every time you say, okay, today we want to test urgency versus something else, right? So that's my approach with my team, where we need to keep it simple so that we can digest the results and make sense out of it and make a decision. Otherwise, we end up in analysis paralysis.
Oh, yeah. Shawna, Houman, anyone else got any thoughts on this? Go
Yeah,
ahead, Shawna.
We do a lot of what Anurag is talking about, a lot of testing for form and trying to determine like which audiences want what in the subject line. So there is always that element, and those tend to run over longer periods of time. We'll test multiple times. But we also are running a lot of in the moment function tests where we're saying, all right, we're launching a big sale and we've got 5 great ideas for subject lines. How are we going to pick? Sometimes it just is so subjective. So we are really utilizing that kind of testing to the small audiences and rolling out the winner in real time. We do a lot of that because you just really never know, and it can make a huge difference. You place your bets. Do they want to know the promo code in the subject line or not? Do they want to, it to be kind of a teaser? Do they want all the info? Is it straightforward? And even if you test that 100 times, people's tastes will change. So we do actually use a lot of that as well. So we're really doing that in the moment, 10% to version A, 10% to version B, roll out the winner. And that's actually worked really well for us. And we get insights from that as well.
Cool. So we're getting tons of questions in audience. Thank you guys so very much. It is great. And I love the questions that are coming through. Engin and Iain, I'm going to bring you in on very shortly, but I want to ask one that just caught my eye. Let's see, just scrolled here. It's from Michael DeCoco. He's asking, when sending personalized emails, how many emails does that require being created? We're a startup with a very small team. I see how we can start personalizing more, but from an actual execution standpoint, how do we cover it? Is a subject line and preview sufficient, or does the body need to be personalized as well? I would think the general answer from our panel is going to be the more the better, because I know, Houman, you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I look at the email, every square inch that we can personalize, we should. It's something that there's a roadmap for it, right? You're not going to have everything personalized day one, but you should have a roadmap in terms of, hey, here's data that we have available to us. But to answer Michael's specific question in terms of, is it a manual effort? It really shouldn't be. The technology, again, it's come so far that you really need to either have a CDP, a customer data platform. You need to have your first party data strategy, because these are all elements that can be personalized in real time through the email channel. So, I mean, we're sending, hundreds of millions of emails out per year. There's no way that somebody's going to sit down and manually do that. You really need to kind of think of your email as an extension of your website, right? Somebody comes to the website, there may have been some history of things that they've done. The email should also be an extension of the website to some extent, right? The same way you personalize on your website, you should also be personalizing in your email, because every individual is different. There's going to be a historical behavior that they've taken from a transactional perspective. There's real-time clickstream behavior of things that they're looking at on the website, items that they may be adding to cart, categories that they may be clicking on. We've even taken our blog strategy into it as well too. There might be content that they've interacted with on the website. Let's collect that information. Maybe there's products that are relevant to that content, right? So, I think the entire email could actually be personalized, but don't let that stop you or slow you down in terms of looking at it as a daunting task. Really look at your tech stack and, understand the customer, understand what your goals are, and then make sure you have the technology that can support it. But you'd be amazed, like in terms of what the CDPs that can really do today that couldn't do 5, 10, 15 years ago, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, a definite yes there.
Yeah, the more the better. Any other thoughts on that before we go back to the science side of this thing? Going once, going twice. Done. We're going over to the next question. So it's going back to the science and technical side of this equation. For Iain, I'm going to start with you. When we took a look at all of the attendees, all the attending companies on our webinar, and found that so many of them have so many potential issues, was that surprising to you?
Sadly, no, not at all. So as maybe I've got a slightly interesting mix, having both technical and also marketing. But I mean, I've under my security guys, I've done DMARC and counter of fraudulent mail across a number of large organizations, and they are always the same. And what you generally find is very poor email practices that have been used in the past, and often a fair degree of lack of understanding about how it works. There seems to be a presumption that if you just send an email, it will be delivered, and you can pretty much send it as any address, can't you? And what you usually find is that often companies are their own worst enemies, in that they will send mail from lots of different infrastructures, and they'll sometimes set up some security controls, but they don't know what someone else is doing in another part. So everything being sent from that part is all seen by ISPs as being spam and a failure. So they might not realize it, but often they end up acting as if they're spammers themselves, and you often find a horrible tangle to try and put right, try and sort out deliverability issues.
Yeah, let me bring you back in. You've been awfully quiet. We can bring you back into the fold here. Any thoughts on this? I mean, I guess that really wasn't all that surprising to you. You deal with this constantly. And
Sorry,
you're on mute. Unmute yourself, sir. We cannot unmute you on this side. I'm not going to keep singing because we've got to get you unmuted. There he is. So, getting back to the question, when we did the analysis, I guess you were like zero surprised to see that there are this many issues sitting there. And that's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's one of those things that kind of sits in the background. You think you got it covered, but actually you don't, or it shifted. The landscape shifted underneath you, and you didn't realize, well, now it's important. Am I where?
No,
what do you think there?
You're not a million miles off. And it is, as Iain was saying as well, this occurs very often. And it's that kind of balance between, the business objective that marketing's trying to deliver and the objectives that security and IT are trying to deliver. And everyone's right. They're just right in different ways. So, apologies, Iain, but sometimes people might see your function as the department who likes to say no.
No.
Oh, absolutely.
And as a result of that, they might go and find some other more expedient sending services, which probably cause you some headache late at night or early in the morning. And so, it's not surprising to see those kind of situations. And, as time goes on, historically, those things get left behind and you get these fragments left that cause issues. So it's not uncommon. But it really does call for, that coming together of marketing, security, IT, and those constituent parts to make sure that, when someone says there is a deliverability problem, some people might think, okay, I know how to fix that, and they turn to the tooling that they've already got. Maybe, my time of day was wrong. Maybe that was the issue. But from Iain's point of view, he hasn't been brought into the mix, and he needs to kind of understand and say, hey, actually, this might be your problem. So there could be, low-hanging fruit that hasn't yet been picked.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say that quite a lot of my involvement isn't even actually strictly security. It's just email experience. And just as a counter story to, well, they go to somebody more expedient, or something we actually found in doing some of our own security related work was we were using a well-known external direct marketing company focused on fashion. They were one of those expedient companies externally. And 100% of the mail that they were sending, which was in the millions per month, was being interpreted by ISPs as fraudulent and likely to be delivered to spam or not delivered at all. So sometimes people think they're doing something expedient because they don't realize that so much of that mail is actually not being delivered. They count the number of messages sent. Just because you stuff them in the letterbox does not mean that they get delivered, let alone read.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's sitting in the back of my mind here. Like, if this is happening, somebody's got to take responsibility for it. And it's just too easy to be siloed and have, well, that's not my job. And I think on the call, just before we went live here, we were chatting about this. And I think Anurag or Houman, one of you were saying, okay, email deliverability rests with the person sending the email. Are we in agreement there? Like, you may not have to know all of this, but it's your responsibility. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we break this disconnect if there is one, especially at the larger companies? Anurag, you want to hit this first, then we'll go to you.
Yeah. I think the channel owner eventually has to. There's I think Houman said it in that conversation, so I'm going to leave that portion for him, which is at the end of the day, the technology teams that are behind us, there's the support team that are providing us services, right? The metric of success still lies with the business owner / channel owner. The way I look at it is, we may not even have to look at deliverability rate, right? You look at how much revenue are you generating from your email marketing channel, and is it growing or declining? If you just look at that question will beget more questions, will eventually at some point end to Iain's plate. Let's just make sure as business owners, we don't take 6 months to get there, right? That's how I think about it. So it does reside with channel owners. And sometimes we tend to, as marketeers, we may try to hide behind, that's technical stuff, I don't know it. But then the counterpoint I have is, when it comes about sexy technology, remember the DMP days, and nowadays Houman has mentioned CDP, then we are all up in the arms and into the technical side. But just because an ESP is an old technology doesn't mean that we don't want to talk about it. So we need to be talking about it as marketeers and business owners.
Yeah, Houman, I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's this convergence or even marriage between marketing and technology, hence the MarTech, industry. And, we're going to see more and more of this. But I think the great thing about these panels is it starts with awareness, right? I mean, we have Iain and we have Engin that come from the tech side, and we have the marketing representation here as well. And it's, these panels are great to kind of let people know that, hey, there is this new standard that's coming out. So it starts with awareness. I 100% agree that, deliverability from an ownership perspective lies with the teams that are sending the emails. But there's got to be that partnership. There's got to be that collaboration with your technology teams, right? You can't operate in silos, because that's just really setting yourself up for failure. But I think ultimately it starts with awareness to, hey, there is this, there's new standards that are going to be coming out, but you have to really understand it and make sure that you have the right solutions and the right collaboration between marketing and technology to get there. So,
are there any metrics that we should be looking at, or retailers should be looking at, to kind of see if is shifting underneath you? I mean, everyone looks at all the revenue driving metrics, but is there anything that's more foundational? Houman, I think you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a number of metrics. I mean, any metrics around deliverability are going to be key, right? So are your emails getting to the inbox? I mean, there's postmaster reports that you can be looking at from Gmail, for example. But there's also dedicated tools and platforms out there, that also support, more visibility into what is your email getting into the inbox. So, and I think we've kind of separated these two types of metrics, right? If you're not getting into the inbox, you might as well go home, right? It's a non-starter, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then once you do get to the inbox, that's where the personalization and all these other metrics that really come into when you talk about engagement and whether, do you have the right message that's relevant to the user? But yeah, spam rates, bounce rates, deliverability rates, like those are all going to be key things that you want to look at in terms of whether you're getting into the inbox.
Cool. So we're at the last 5 minutes of our webinar here. There's a bunch of good questions coming in. I just kind of want to go through them. So let's kind of motor through this. Sucharita has a specific question for Shawna. What about highly regulated industries like healthcare, where there's a limited scope for high levels of creativity and content? Can you share some of the best practices from your experience?
Well, we like to think that we are still pushing the envelope in terms of the creative layer with our, even though it is, you could look at it and say this is fairly boring product on one level, but you are right to ask about the regulated nature of the industry. I mean, we have a huge compliance department, and they are extremely connected into everything that we do. I mean, they're reviewing every email, every big marketing campaign that we do, every promo that we run, and I think we just had to kind of bring them in. They're very knowledgeable at this point. They're doing editing of content for us. I'm very comfortable giving our head of compliance articles to essentially rewrite for me because she's so knowledgeable and she's also very creative. So it really is that partnership. But having a great compliance team that is trying to work with you to push the envelope in terms of creativity helps, because they're always looking for solutions. It's not just like a no. They're not your typical like, no way, can't do that, it's too risky, legal doesn't like it, so they do help us achieve that goal. And we've been able to do some very interesting things over this past year with that partnership being so strong.
All right. Hannah Sinclair is asking, any tips for engaging the younger generation via email? I'm going to toss that out. You guys can fight over it and see who goes first.
I'm going to give this one to Anurag, because I think, Anurag, you touched on emojis. That's a perfect.
Oh, yeah, it's clearly.
So
it would be swell if you could answer that.
Yeah, I was about to say, do we have to bring email in that conversation? I mean, I think that should be TikTok and SMS and something else. I think it's still content.
Email.
Yeah, don't use email.
Do they know what email is? I don't think they know what email is.
I know. It's like I have to send email to my daughter and then text her. I sent you an email.
What's that, boomer? Right?
All right, so the panel has waited on that question. Don't use email. That's the hint there. Perfect. Megan Kelly asks, I found that my open rates are great, but my click-through rates could definitely use some work. Any insight on how to increase clicks once someone has opened up an email? Really? Deafening silence from our pros?
I think there's so much there. It goes back to, I think, a lot of science here. Houman was talking about, I think, one theme, if everybody has gotten, is that we have tools at our disposal. Are you looking at the heat maps of your emails? Are you looking at where your CTAs are? You start with that science part and then slowly move into the art part, which Shawna kicked off the panel with this afternoon, which was engaging content. I think both are relevant, but you have to start digging from data and see what might be some of those pieces driving it.
I'm glad you mentioned heat maps. I mean, that's absolutely invaluable to, when you really look at that, you'll see exactly what people are clicking on, and it's eye-opening. I mean, you realize that sometimes we're over designing. We've seen some of that recently. Like I mentioned, everyone wants short and snappy right now. They don't want to waste a lot of time. So you don't need to even waste the creative team's time on maybe 60% of the content that was really relevant last year. So you've got to watch those heat maps, because people's preferences change, and they're changing right now by the minute. I think that's why this question keeps coming up. I think everyone, we at least in this group, we've been talking about click-through rates, and it is, I think, a struggle for everyone right now, because again, competing with people wanting to be out of the house and off their devices right now.
All right, cruising right along here. Another question from Lucia. We're struggling with email list growth. Any tips for email acquisition tactics that work well? So buying lists from third world countries, or turning off your unsubscribe button. Clearly winning tactics there. But seriously, how do we boost those email acquisition?
Yeah,
Again?
I would avoid any list buying, especially if you care about deliverability. So yeah, definitely. I don't know if the audience got that as a joke. So
please take that as a joke.
Okay.
Please take that as a joke.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's engaging content, isn't it? I mean, that's being relevant to the audience in the way how to be relevant. I think that's going to increase the number of people wanting to stay with you or recommending to friends. Any other thoughts on that before we begin to wrap up here?
I think, again, go ahead, Houman.
I was just going to say, yeah, in terms of email list growth, it's more about providing an offer, providing something of value to the user for them to want to give you an email address. And then also SMS. that's also a big channel that's growing, right? Maybe it's not just about email list growth. Maybe they're more comfortable for the younger audiences to give you, their cell phone number for text messaging. And sweepstakes and contests, I think those are still, tactics and strategies that work. So you can also think about that in terms of, growing your list size.
All right.
Yeah, I think the key was what Houman mentioned. I would say SMS, look at all your channels, right? So as small little things as your social media properties, do they have a lead generation component there or not? The second piece I would not lose sight of is your unsubscribe rates and the bounce rates. We are always as marketeers focused on acquisition. We always forget this leak, and we have to also look at and focus on stopping the leak and not just bringing in more water into the tank.
All right. I think we are done. Thank you, all of you, so much for joining us today. Shawna, Engin, Anurag, Houman, Iain, thank you, especially from the UK, staying up late to be with us. You guys were great. It's always a joy to have you here. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys later. For the rest of our audience, I just want to say that I want to thank Sift for sponsoring the webinar today. And finally, thanks to our audience for joining us. It's wonderful that you guys take the time to be with us and you ask all those questions. My name is Allan Dick, and on behalf of everyone here at CommerceNext, we hope you enjoyed the webinar. Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the survey that you'll see at the end of this webinar. We hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you here next Wednesday. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.